Hey there, it's Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. Today's video is part 2 of my March 2022 wrap-up. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the 8 books that I didn't talk about in my part 1 video, which I'll link in the description below. If you haven't checked it out, I'll talk about some books that I liked and some that I did not. So let's talk about the rest of the books that I read in March, starting with Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I have been saying for over 2 years that I was going to reread this book, finally reread this book, so that I can continue on with this series, and I did. I'm really happy with myself because I've actually finally gotten to it, and I really enjoyed it when I read it. I don't really know why it took me so long. I first read this, I think, in either 2018 or 2017, and then I just didn't read the sequels. And then I sort of fell off wanting to continue with it until I read Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares, and I was like, I should really give that another go. And then I procrastinated for some more years because why not? Of course, that is very me. And here we are, I finally reread this book. So this book is about a girl called Karu who works for some demon-like creatures called Chimera, and she collects teeth for them. She goes all around the world, and then one day something happens with the portals and it all goes very wrong. I don't really want to go into it more than that because I feel like it's spoilery, and it's better if you go in knowing less. I really can't say why I struggled to pick this up, but I did really enjoy it when I did, and I found that it was actually a better reread than the first time I'd read it, because a lot of the things that I had a problem with at first, like how it sort of appeared kind of like insta-love, I sort of knew what was going on there, so I wasn't mad about it, and I enjoyed it. It was a good read. I'm glad that I finally reread it, and I'm excited to read the next one. The next book that I picked up was The Name Game by C.J. Swift. So this book was actually sent to me by the author in exchange for an honest review, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. So the premise of this book is that the main character is trying to get a promotion at her work, but her boss says that it's a family business and kind of implies that she needs to be in a relationship or have a family of some sort to actually be able to take over. So the main character lies and says she's still in a relationship even though she broke up with her boyfriend. So then she has to go and find someone with the same name to then convince to be her fiancé in 6 months before a particular speech that she needs to give. So I found the plot quite interesting, but I will say that this book doesn't exactly focus on that plot too much. It's more of like a catalyst to focus on the different types of relationships that the main character has. I'm gonna keep calling the main character because nobody in this book has a name. There are no names and there are no physical descriptors. I mean, people are very clearly this person, this person, this person, but it is quite interesting how that's done, and I believe it was done on purpose so that sort of anyone could sort of see themselves in that position, which I quite like. It was interesting, it was a bit different, but it definitely makes it hard to talk about, so I'm just going to call the main character the main character. So the first half of this book kind of just is a series of dates that the main character goes on, and it's a little bit like a dating game where you like do this, you hook up with this person on the dating app, but are they for you? Probably not, and like it carries on going. I honestly found I really started to like this book when the main love interest came into the picture. I really liked their open communication and how they would actually just talk to each other about things. That was really nice. Though I do feel like at times some issues were sort of shoehorned into the plot a little bit too hard. Occasionally like an issue would pop up. Like for instance, one of the guys that the main character dates is a little bit older than she is, and then someone comes over and starts insinuating that they're in like a grave robber, cradle robber thing. I don't know what the term is. It feels a little bit preachy in that little section, but I can sort of see where the author was going, and the sections are over quick enough. Like it happens maybe 3 times throughout the book, but it didn't bother me too much, and I feel like the rest of it sort of made up for that. I did really like the chemistry between the main character and the love interest, and to be honest, some of the other dates that she has previously have pretty good chemistry as well. I will say there's a lot of smut in this book. A lot. So, I mean, if you don't want to read about that, maybe not the book for you. I also enjoyed how it sort of subverted my expectations of what I thought was going to happen and did something different, which I was very happy with, because I thought, well, maybe this is just going to end the way I think it's going to end, and it didn't. So I quite liked that. So overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I did enjoy it. The next book that I read was another buddy read with Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book, and that was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This was a book on my 30 to read before 30 TBR, and I'm so glad to have finally read this one. So this book is sort of a sci-fi horror / thriller set in caves. So the main character is a one-man caver who is on her way to try and find something at the bottom of this cave system, which is very dangerous and has killed a large number of cavers, particularly because there is a creature that lives inside of these mines called a tunneler that just moves around and the caves move and people die. It's not a fun time. Honestly, caves are terrifying anyway. I find them particularly horrifically terrifying. And I feel like this is the fault of Mr. Bolin. I don't know if any of you have watched Mr. Bolin on YouTube, but when I first found his channel, he was doing a lot of true life caving stories and cave diving stories, and don't go in caves. Just don't. Cave diving is a big nope. Just, do you want to die? Because that's what's going to happen if you go in a cave. Honestly, I just find that like one of the most terrifying settings, so I was sort of doomed to already be involved in the horror of this because I just found it so scary, and I found that this was a very anxiety inducing book in like the best kind of way. Like, you were so tense for so long throughout this book, and I feel like that was very well done horror. I also really liked how you couldn't always tell what was real and what wasn't real, because it just really worked in this setting. And at times the main character drove me a little bit nuts because she would make a decision, but then you would know why she'd made that decision and be like, please don't do that. It's like, no, don't do that. That's not gonna end well for you. And then she would do it, and it was just, oh, stressful. I also liked the relationship between the main character and the person that was directing her, and how that sort of developed as the book went on. I feel like they're kind of toxic towards each other, but also they're kind of trauma bonding in this horrific experience that is just happening here. And I also liked how not all of the questions were answered, and like the cave remains a little bit mysterious, and I just enjoyed that because caves are scary. Don't go in caves. Anyway, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is probably a 4 out of 5 star book, but for my personal enjoyment, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Drakora by Lynette Noni. This is the third book in the Midorian Chronicles, the first book of which is Akane. I really liked where this book went. It is a time travel book, so we get to go back in time and meet some characters before they became the characters that we know. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but it was very good. I really enjoyed the different aspects of the characters and sort of seeing how that plot unraveled. Also, my favourite character of the series was introduced in this book. I am such a huge fan of Nyx. I feel like every time that he appeared on the scene, I was like, yes, Nyx, I just love him. He's just one of those characters that you just can't help but fall for, and I was so invested in every part of the book that he was in. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyed it, sped right through it, and I'm really eager to see what happens in the next one. The next book I picked up was Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. Now, I do feel like one of the last people in the world to have ever picked this book up, and I'm really glad that I did. I'm like surprisingly glad that I picked this book up. I think when this book first came out, I was very deep in a special interest of Twilight, and I was like, this is the only vampire series for me, it's the only one I need. Picking this book up, I feel I may have made a mistake, because I feel like this would have been such a good one to get obsessed with as well. It's really interesting to me because I don't feel like this has aged in the same way as other vampire romances, because there's a little bit more going on. I didn't feel like the main character was just kind of always just base. I felt like I really liked her personality, and the fact that she actually had some strength, and her thought processes, for the most part, were quite rational. I will say one thing that really annoyed me though was there's quite a focus on teenage hormones and like body parts, and like, I've got big boobs. You know, I just don't need it, and I don't need it. But I can kind of forgive it in the sense that these are teenage girls. There's like a lot of bullying that happened in it, which I again could have done without. But as a first book in a series goes, I was quite impressed and I enjoyed it. And I will definitely be picking up the next one. I will say there's a trigger warning for self-harm and depression, which completely took me by surprise. I was not expecting that to happen. But yeah, I was sucked straight into this story, and I feel like the Guardians and their attitudes was a nice foil to the teen drama aspect, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was The Two Towers. The Two Towers. Two Towers is... which one is the first one? That's part 1, that's part 2. And I very much enjoyed this one. Very, very much. I enjoyed it more than The Fellowship. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and it gave me so much happy nostalgia, and the more that I read these books, the more I fall in love with like Ulyss and Gimli and their bromance, and I'm just like, yes, please. I find it even better than in the film, and they are a particular highlight for me. One thing I hadn't remembered is that so much happens so quickly. Everything happens in a span of days rather than like a perceived longer time, like a week, 2 weeks. Give me a few more days and nights, because this is all so quick. So that was just an interesting thought that I had about it. I do have another thing that I want to talk about, but sort of more question you guys about, anybody who has read this book, because I don't know if it's just this particular edition or if this is how the book is laid out in all editions. So the first part of the Two Towers is Merry, Pippin and Treebeard's story and like what happens with them, and also Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli and Gandalf and their story in Rohan, Battle of Helm's Deep, everything. So this other book here is purely Frodo, Sam and Gollum. I'm just curious, is it always split out like that? Because it feels a little bit odd to me, and I feel like it would have been better had it been more integrated and we were flunking back and forth a little bit more, because it's nice to have a little bit more variety and see that everything is moving along at the same pace. Just a thought I had, I don't know, let me know if it's always split out like this or if it's just my weird additions. So the next book I picked up was The Hunt by T.J. Leben. This book is about a secret society who randomly kidnap someone's family and then tells the person who is left that they need to run away and are being hunted, and if they escape then their family will be murdered, and if they end up getting caught by the hunters then their family will be set free. And this book follows a guy who likes to run a lot. He comes back off his morning run and his family are gone, and someone's like, we've got your family, and then somebody else appears and is like, I escaped from them before and I will help you. And it all goes a bit tits up. So this book is predominantly running. There is a lot of running that happens in here, but it's also kind of reminiscent of that film, The Hunt, where the rich people kidnap all of the people and just take them out in various ways. I wish I liked it a little bit more than I did. There were some good things about it, but it did also drag a little bit and people made some stupid decisions sometimes. Also a little bit fatphobic in the sense that the main character is like, oh, I'm really fit and running now and I used to be chubby. Oh no, the worst thing, but I'm fit now. I could have done without that. I feel like the main character is literally fighting, excuse you. I could have done without that. I feel like the main character is literally fighting to stay alive. They're running through the night in like the Welsh mountains. Who's thinking about how they used to be chubby? Like, no, you're preoccupied, your children have been kidnapped. So I'd classify this book as a popcorn thriller, kind of one of those ones that you take on holiday with you, you'd read it really quickly and you'd maybe leave on the shelf for somebody else, the next person to still leave there when they're done. And the last book that I read in March was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. I started this reread. I'm rereading it with a friend who has read the book and a friend who has never read the book. And I very much enjoyed this reread. It's the first time that I have reread it having finished A Court of Wings and Ruin, so knowing where that storyline goes up to, and that was definitely an experience. I had feelings towards Tamlin, and yeah, it's so hard to not spoil anything about like certain storylines when you're reading it with someone who hasn't read it before, because all I want to do is like, oh my god, every word that comes out of this person's mouth is just making my head want to explode. I hate him so much, and I'm just like, yes, he's a lovely protagonist, lovely love interest. Anyway, there were some nice foreshadowing moments, but I feel like the next time I reread this, I kind of might start from Calamai and then skip to Under the Mountain. That's bad, but also So there we have it, those are the books that I read in March. I feel like I had quite a lot of good ratings and I feel really happy about my reading for the month. 17 books in a month is, you know, great. I'm just really happy with that number of books that I read. So I'm feeling really positive. And if you made it this far into the video, please leave me some sort of boot shoe emoji for this boot shoe print thing and the running. Maybe a running man. I don't know. Leave whatever you want. And if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!